Tina, and your other guests and your listeners. I'm chuckling because when you invited me and the two subjects with Biden and his running mate that he was considering, I don't know if you're going to talk about that or not, but my girl Hillary Clinton, yes, I was one of her national surrogates during 2008 and in 2016, even against my guy Obama, especially coming straight from Chicago. But when you think of Hillary urge to run, I'm chuckling because it's something that she's always had. I mean, this is when it comes to the presidential campaign, Hillary is a marathon runner, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think she just got a little bit sidetracked because of the failed end of the races that she wanted to accomplish in 2008 and 2016. But Hillary has told us herself that she was, made for this and that it was her turn. And I think that she's never stopped that turning and wondering. Plus, we have to admit that she's a brilliant politician. She's a global woman, not only because of her travels as a Secretary of State, but how influential she was in her husband's own administration, and how she is against my guy Obama, especially coming straight from Chicago, to create under her husband's administration as a governor and as president, that we still feel the benefit of them today, which are not often talked about. So I think it's a scratch that she has, an itch that she has never not scratched. And it'll be interesting to see what when you think Dwight may say about that, and other people may think about it. But it's like you mentioned Colby. Colby was born for the game. He's going to be him. Was born and he's always to revolutionize. When it comes to the presidential campaign, Hillary, I believe Colby would have revolutionized the WNBA even more, with even more money equal to pay equity. I think that some things you just really born for and you want to achieve them. So that's how I really feel about Hillary Clinton. So it's not that she had the urge, it's just that it's always been her term because she prepared herself for it and she believes that she could do a good job, whether it's in jest, whether it's rumored or not. And if she got into the race, she'd be far further a runner than Michael Bloomberg with his hundreds of millions of dollars of ads, even at the Super Bowl.
Hey, no question about that. And I have to tell you, call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. Let's talk about it. And please join me on my YouTube page, The Santita Jackson Show, and like and subscribe. And please join us on Facebook on Santita Jackson and Friends, and like and share. Let me go to Madam President-elect. That's right.
Morning, Santita. How are you today?
Oh, I'm doing great. Of course, she is the president-elect. She will assume office at the National Bar Association in July. Can't wait for that to happen, as she is focusing on, she'll be focusing on voter protection and voter registration and voter everything. But come on, CK, talk to me.
Okay. I think if Hillary has an itch or an inkling, she needs to do something about it, if that's what she wants to do. We are 10 months away from electing our next president. And there is no clear frontrunner, even though there should be a clear frontrunner at this point in the Democratic Party. But I just think that all these people who feel an inkling or an urge to do it, they have to get up off of it and do it, if that's what they intend to do. Because we don't have the time. We have, whether we like them or not, a formidable opponent on so many levels in the Republican frontrunner and our president. So I don't know. I just think if she has an inkling, if she's itching and waiting, she needs to get on it and do it, mobilize her troops, and get in the race.
Well, Dwight McKee, I've got about a minute and a half. What say you? Ladies, we have him sandwiched in today. You better say something nice.
We're going to say good morning to the panel, and Marcia, just like Hillary, is also a marathon runner. She's been doing this for a minute. I think that the risk you run with Hillary is that of alienation, is that there is such a constituency of white people that is so emotionally and aggressively against Hillary's campaign, then you run the risk of bringing them together and creating momentum on their side. I think if Hillary wanted to run, she should have made that decision early in before the different factions locked themselves into different constituents. And I think even though she has infrastructure, when she would run it against the kind of hostility that and the kind of alienation that exists now. Even though it was pretty bad when she ran, now it's at an all-time high. And I just think it would probably be counterproductive if it were to run. It's just my view of that.
Well, everybody, let me know what you think. 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. That's WCPT. We're just days away from Iowa. What's going to happen? And then you've got New Hampshire, and then South Carolina, and then Nevada. What is going on here? Because, well, the Clintons they're the best in the game. They're the best in politics. Well, I think the Obamas are pretty great, too. So, if you want to be a politician, these folks are the best at it. So Joe Biden has said, you know what? I want Michelle to be my running mate. She's the most popular woman in the world. In the world. Do you think she'd do it? Should she do it? It's exciting to see women seriously considered for the highest offices in the land. But what will they bring? What will they deliver? It's not just enough to have a black person or a woman or a person of color or someone who is from a marginalized group in those offices. We need deliverables. We have low wages, high underemployment. We cannot afford our health care. We cannot afford to be healthy. Something's going on here, everybody. Who's going to deliver for us? Let's talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show.
Keep forgetting the Lord.
CPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago traffic update.
I keep forgetting the Lord.
CTA red line trains on the inbound and outbound side are standing near Sumac Chinatown right now.
Is Zoe here?
Customer.
Yes.
The Expressway looks good. Kennedy inbound. Better delay start at Harlem. 25
Alright,
minutes
I put on
down
commercial for my thing too.
Inbound Eisenhower delay start before 17th Avenue. 34 minutes, 390 to downtown. Inbound Stevenson at stop and go central to Pulaski. 37 minutes, 355 to Lakeshore Drive. Ryan is 22 minutes, 95th to downtown. I-57, 16 minutes, I-8 to the Merge, Fisherport 18. No-way traffic moves well, no problems to report right now on I-80 or Northwest Indiana. Winfield, there's a crash at Honey Farm at Geneva Road. I'm Jim Alamonte.
Out Chicago.
Illinois raked in $3.2 million the first day of legal recreational cannabis sales. Do we know exactly where it's going for?
The tollways, when they started up, we're just gonna have the fees on there until we pay for the roads. Remember that one?
Well, we still have to pay for the roads because we still need to fix the roads.
It's
It's a mess.
It was a big lie.
Catch Out Chicago every Sunday, 11 to 1 on WCPT 820.
Now, who's the troll? Verlon.
This is Louis Kyra from
That he's on?
Well, cannabis is now legal in
Yes.
Illinois, which means you cannot be charged criminally as long as you're in compliance with
Look,
the
he
cannabis
gets
Act.
everybody all
You
riled
cannot
up.
ingest in
They
public
call him a
or
troll.
You must
2020, where facts matter.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. In the next hour, we're going to be talking about John Bolton. Will he testify? Should he testify? Will the White House block him? Oh my goodness, the impeachment trial. Will you really trust the results if he doesn't testify? And others? Let's talk about that in the next hour. But right now, we're talking about election 2020. Iowa is just days away, and we have a lot of people who are asking a lot of questions about Hillary Clinton. Will she run again? Really think about it. My wonderful panel, Dwight McKee, Reverend Marcia Dyson, Attorney C.K. Hoffler. 3 million votes on the table. That's very hard to believe. Just rocks, as Reverend Jackson said when he ran for president, just rocks just laying around. You can't do that. So I want to hear from you, everybody. And then, what about Vice President Biden saying that he would like Michelle to run? And he's said it so much, you kind of have to take it seriously. Because they've been trying to float the idea of her running, whoever they are. When I've been looking at that in the media, and I said, okay, why? Because I'm trying to figure out where we're going with this whole presidential thing. What are the real qualifications now? She's obviously so bright and and very engaging, very popular. But is that enough to be president? So you all jump in. Were you about to say something, Dwight McKee, before we go to the callers?
Yeah, I can't. What's in it for Michelle would be my question. You leave an opportunity to make $100 million, have no accountability, run the world, be with your children, and swim with your husband every day. To deal with all that stress and all that anxiety and to deal with a world on the brink of war. What's in it for Michelle? Marcia, what's in it for Michelle?
It's nothing.
What's in it for Michelle?
It's absolutely nothing. Right now, she is First Lady forever. She's won every vote, every heart. She has a platform that she creates herself to do the good for people, whether it's around education and health. She's a brand ambassador for the United States of America, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. And you have to think about it, and I just chuckle at it a little bit, is that if her husband has not endorsed a candidate, he hasn't shown any strong support for Joe Biden, and that's real, then why would she want to step into a role she had anyway? Most First Ladies, when they're strong like Hillary Clinton was under her husband's administration, and Michelle, they're already vice president, so why would y'all want to do a remix? I got the job I want. I have the gig. It's just what Dwight said. She has the freedom. She has the money. She's been there. She's done that. No need to be in a second seat.
Well, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, you're mighty quiet.
I agree with that, panelists. I think this is I'm frustrated with all of these thoughts that candidates have about who they may or may not bring on the ticket. There's absolutely no incentive for Michelle Obama to want to join this fight right now. She's already done it for 8 years. She's paid her dues, she's been there, she's done that, and she's sitting on top of the world. And so I don't even think that this is a real possibility. So my frustration is I think we need to really talk in terms of real possibilities. Yes, everybody loves her. Yes, it's nice to say everything. But if Biden wants to win the election, there's no time for we need to be very decisive as a party if we're trying to win this election. So that's my source of frustration. And I just don't think Michelle would have any interest. I agree with the panelists. Why would she even consider this? She has given 8 years of her life, her family's life, her children's life to the American people, and she's given to the world every day. She's paid her dues. She did it. It's almost like I've done it at the top. Why would I do it this way? She's already proven her love and dedication to the country. She doesn't need to do more. So I don't see any incentive. Now, if there were reports that Michelle said she would consider that, I would look at it differently. But I just don't see that happening. I think the Democratic Party is just focused on how they can win. If Biden is saying that he wants to have, he thinks it would be really, really interesting to have an African-American running mate. We've got a few of them that probably would be very, very significant. in this race.
But and I've. Mm-hmm.
Just saying, because you have women who have applied for it and have thrown their names out somewhat. So you also have someone who has something to win from being a VP, like Kamala Harris, like Stacey Abrams. So that's why I chuckle. If you really want to make a real flirt, if you're going to really tease about a woman, a black woman for a VP, get those who are already in the queue.
Well, and I want us to focus more on policy than personality. I want to know who's going to give me deliverables. Yeah, on health care. These are the things that I want to talk about. I want to talk about public education that is funded properly. How are we going to move American children into the global marketplace? Not just academically, but vocationally, culturally. We're lagging behind. We're falling behind. And so I want to know what the plan is. Let me go to, oh my goodness, Verlon. He's so popular with everyone here. What you got to say, Verlon?
How you doing, Santita, and how you doing to your panel? I want to speak to two issues, something that you brought up in your news report, and I want to speak to this. In your news report, you said that the Republicans may be scared of Trump. It's not that. Okay, Alan Dershowitz, Jay Sekulow, Ken Starr, and a few others shredded the Democrat layout when it comes to impeaching the president. I don't care how passionate Adam Schiff is, and I don't care how angry Natler comes off.
He's so popular.
They should have had an airtight case before they brought it to the Senate. You can't bring it to the Senate and how you doing to your panel. I don't know what you should have done. You guys are having a sandwich. The same thing that a prosecutor can do to anybody in the United States.
Verlon, he said to Verlon, wait a minute, wait. The president said that people would have he put people's heads on a pike. Now that's a threat. Now come on. Now, and wait a minute, and I know, wait a minute, and I know Washington, and I know Washington politics, and people get threatened all the time. Marcia and Dwight and CK.
And I want to speak to this. In your news report, you said that the Republicans may be scared of Trump. It's not that. Okay, Alan Dershowitz,
they're rejoicing in what they did. It's almost like rejoicing if they cut the electricity off and let Godzilla out of the water. I think you don't understand the position that they've taken. The position is that he's above the law, he's unaccountable, and that he can operate in world politics at his own discretion. And that's frightening. They have put him in a position now that with his disposition, that puts the whole world at threat. And so he's rejoicing over, he may as well be rejoicing on what's happened in China with the viral disease. This is not a good thing, the position that they take. PJ, you want to speak to that?
Well, the other thing I think, these threats are real. We see our president every single day. If you oppose him, he's going to try to annihilate you. So the fact that there are folks in the Republican Party who are taking what he says seriously, who are afraid to take a position against him, not necessarily because of what's going to happen at home in their constituency, but they don't want their heads on the chopping block forever, because he's a take-no-prisoners type of a person if you oppose him. So I think these threats are real. I think it's unfortunate, it's awful that this country is in this position where our president is rejoicing at things that are just, devastating for mankind because of his political agenda. But that's where we are. So the fact that there are Republicans who don't want to break ranks, I don't agree with that. But certainly we have to take into consideration who our president is and what our president is saying to them if they do break ranks. And for those that have in the past, he does try to destroy them. And he does have a mechanism to destroy people.
Absolutely he does. Verlon, your final point?
Okay, now I want to speak to the electability of the Democrats. Number one, if Hillary Clinton runs, she's going to fracture your party for a very long time, and Trump will win in the landslide because the hard left, they don't want it. The young people don't want it. As far as Michelle Obama, listen, Michelle Obama's not going to play second fiddle to anybody. If Donald Trump with no executive experience can be president, yes, Michelle Obama's going to be president. She just doesn't want to upset what's going on right now, so she's going to stay out of it. Stacey Abrams has already said that she's not going to play second fiddle to anybody. You might have a
No,
chance.
no. She said she's open to being vice president. She did say that.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Well, okay. Well, retract that statement.
Yeah, because that was speculation on your part, maybe because she's a strong woman and has opinions. Is that it, Roland?
No, okay. Oh, well, she's a strong black woman with opinions, but I thought that she wouldn't play
I
second.
said she's a strong woman with opinions. Come on now, what's going on with you?
Okay, but she is a strong black woman with opinions. But okay. Now, when it comes to Bernie Sanders, the young people like him, but he won't get the moderate vote because, like I said, socialism and communism isn't where America is right now. And last but not least, Joe Biden, I'll go back to what I said before. The young people don't like him. Like I talked to Ricky Henderson and all of the young people, they don't like him. It would nullify the young vote, and Donald Trump will win 15 to 17%. Whether black people come out and vote for him for 15 to 17%, or they stay home, he would nullify the vote because young people don't like him. So,
You're talking about Bernie Sanders? Young people don't like him? That's not true. Well,
moderates don't like Bernie Sanders, and because he's a socialist / communist, and that's not what America is. But Joe Biden, the young people don't like Joe Biden,
Okay.
and either black
okay.
that's 15, 17%, or they will stay home at 15 to 17%.
Well, we'll see. Maybe that's his wish. I don't know.
This is why it's going to be difficult. No, I was going to say, this is why you talked about a brokered convention, because is it really that young people like Bernie Sanders, or do they like his representatives like Angela Rye, like AOC, and Cardi B, who put him on blast sitting down with him? And my fear with that, even though the young people like, you say they like Bernie Sanders, what my concern is through social media, and I'm glad that American citizens are more engaged as they have more opportunities for outlets to see, to hear, but it also depends on who's bringing them into the party, because if the people to whom their representatives, whether officially or not, are ill-informed on politics, then we're going to have a whole lot of ignorant voters voting for somebody they like, which is going to increase the fracturing that I think your listeners were saying, especially within the Democratic Party, because, you know, you talk about the Iowa caucus coming on now. If everything has shifted and changed as far as politics we're stunned by it, you know, I don't throw that much weight behind Iowa except for its history's sake. But all the dynamics have seemed to change since Trump. So, you know, I feel like, oh, whoever wins the Iowa caucus, that's going to be the nominee. Really? Okay. Oh, New Hampshire. Really? Where's the diversity in all of that? So I think things have just changed so drastically. What the Democrat Party needs to do is figure out amongst themselves, even no matter what the outcome of Iowa would be, who are they going to put themselves behind? If not, Trump would win for all the reasons, even through impeachment. Unless they find a criminal act that they're going to put him in jail, he's still president. He can still run. If you have a fractured Democrat Party and constituency who will fray the whole base of the Democrat Party if they started, you know, this petty politics amongst themselves, you're going to have this man in office, and of course another impeachment probably will ensue. All right? So it's interesting to watch, but it's also scary to watch, not because of who's running and who's in office. It's because the mindset of citizens, what they do and don't know, and why they are responding in the way in which they are.
Let me go to Pam. Pam, what's on your mind?
Hi, Santita. Make a comment about the candidates. Regarding the impeachment, it's unconscionable, the defense he's trying to put forth for Trump. And as I look at this trial, it really is them defending a criminal. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And as I said before, Santita, where are all the people who love this country and love this Constitution? They need to speak out. Because we see how much they love the country, but when they see what Trump is doing to the country, silence. So I'm looking at the impeachment trial, the defense they're putting forth. Well, you know, the House subpoenas were invalid. Have witnesses. It's a trial. And I've listened to some of the questions that are coming from the Republican senators, not trying to ask about the evidence, They're just trying to just refute everything. So I'm hopeful that there are Republicans who will say, and look, at least we need to have witnesses. Bolton, firsthand, first account of what the president said. Where is the discovery of truth in this process? So,
Okay, Pam. So what you got to say about these candidates?
sure, I am concerned about, first of all, Bernie is a democratic socialist, he's not a communist. And that's quite often what Republicans do. They want to come on here and scare us about our candidates. I'm looking for the vision and also policy. And what I'm hearing, Santita, from the moderates, I hear them say, well, Klobuchar, it's pie in the sky. No, she said it's a pipe dream. We can't get it done. Then I hear Vice President Joe Biden, I hear him state, well, I can bring the rest of the party along. For me, that's code is where the wealthy people aren't going to support Warren or Sanders. Now, when I hear healthcare is concerned, making sure the wealthy pay their fair share, and to make sure we talk about poverty, food insecurity. Now we have home insecurity because people can't affordable housing. So those issues are important. And from what I'm hearing, I'm not hearing much of that. I don't even know what Biden's vision is. Klobuchar, she wants to reach out to the Republicans and meet somewhere in the middle. And I'm not trying to coalesce with the Republicans, and maybe that's not politically astute. But every time we coalesce with them, we get the short end of that stick on policy, on legislation. So I'm looking progressive. And I'm also wanting to make sure, Santita, that we incorporate the unregistered voters. How many voters has the Warren campaign, the Biden campaign? They just want a campaign, or do they really want to go out and actively register unregistered voters and make sure that there is a strategy to get those who are registered to the polls?
But you know what, Pam, really, historically, Democrats rare has been the Democrat, rare has been the candidate who's gone out to register voters. They get the high propensity voters, people who tend to vote. And that, to me, is tragic. Dwight McKee, why don't you speak to that?
Yeah, I think that I always say that this is going to be a demographic fight. Is that based on the way the election is structured? Is that structured based on the states that have to be dealt with? You have to register those voters in those states that Trump has a margin in. Hillary really lost that election by not going in 3 or 4 states. So I think that we have to really focus on, in a situation where they're trying to unregister voters, is a counter-revolution where we're trying to register voters. And on the last call, I wanted to say to him that if what you say is true and Trump does win, then God save us all, including you. I've never heard anybody so excited to have a first row ticket on the Titanic as that caller. He is just excited about his own demise. He's going to be in that same situation. It's amazing to me.
Oh, let me go to Raymond. Front row seat on the Titanic. Raymond, what's on your mind?
I think Hillary shouldn't be the candidate. Hillary ran in 2016 and she lost. And she gave us the worst president that America has ever had.
No, wait, Raymond, stop. I want you to continue, but I've got to engage you here. She did not lose. She won the popular vote by 3 million votes. She did not give us Trump. White people gave us Trump. The majority of the white voters gave us Trump. He got more votes in more places, spread out all around the country, and he only won by like 77,000 votes. So, I mean, we lost 75,000 votes in Detroit were not counted. So all this whole thing is in dispute.
Did she win or lose?
She won, he lost, and like Republicans do, when Republican losers go into office, look at the senator from Arizona. She lost the race, and then she was appointed to become the senator.
Yeah, that's different.
No, that's what they do in principle. They purge voters. Between 2014 and 2018, they have purged 34 million voters. That is what they do. They lost in 2000 and they became president. They constantly lose, and then they get pushed into office.
Let me ask you a question. Why she keep blaming Bernie for her loss?
You tell me. What do you think?
I think she's dividing the country. I think that she should either get on the team and be supportive, but not divisive. And Bernard, I think he belongs on. I think you give him too much time, and I think that he should be on Fox instead of your station.
Who? Who should be on? Raymond, who are you saying should be on my state? Should be on Fox instead of being on WCPT?
But Bernard is.
Oh, Verlon, yes.
Bernard, he should be on Fox, but I think you give him too much time. That's all I was saying. But I think Hillary should stop going out and beating up on Bernie, because Bernie has lots of followers, and she should try to bring the country together and not divide it.
Thank you, Raymond. Let me tell you, I give Verlon and Tim and others who do not share my political point of view, because the FCC has said that these airwaves are free, and all I ask is that you be decent and kind and respectful here. That is what I ask. I'm not going to shut anybody out. I don't believe in that. I believe that there's, at some point, I think we need to hear each other. When I was a commentator on Fox, I said, you don't need to talk about the South Side. You're talking to the South Side. This is where I live. This is where I'm from. And we do a lot of talking about each other, but we do precious too little talking to and with each other. And I'm going to continue to do that. And I want to thank you for being with me today. But look, yes, sir. I gave him as much time as I've given you today, actually. All right, sweetie.
Have a great one.
You too. Hey, that's what I do. So you know what? We've got about a minute left in this segment. Let me just, we're going to stretch it out. We'll have 2 minutes, Lady B. Okay, let me start with you, Attorney Hoffler. Your closing thoughts.
Hello?
Oh, yes, Attorney Hoffler, your closing thoughts. What do you think about all these people putting their hats in the ring at this point, or even thinking about it?
I think we need to the Democrats need to get on a program, have a clear candidate that everybody can support, have a clear running mate, and be on the same page so that they can defeat the president. Because otherwise, the president's going to win by a landslide. It's not going to even be what we've made it done. And that would be a travesty, because there are people in this country who do not want him to continue to serve as our president. And so I am concerned, very, very concerned, that at the last minute here, a number of people are jumping in the race, because that's just diffusing the vote, as opposed to the party coming together behind a candidate, behind a vice presidential candidate. We have a number of people who are qualified. As we said earlier, if Joe Biden wants an African-American woman, we've got 2 he can pick from. If he wants an African-American male, there are many that he can pick from.
Marcia? Thank you. So, Marcia, I've got less than a minute.
Okay, I just agree with what she had said. I think that the American citizens and the Democratic Party, those in the Democratic Party and the people who are running, need to get their act together, stop all the pipe dreaming that they're doing, get somebody on board, because we need, obviously, some augmentation in their platform so that they can push their numbers higher and see concretely who could be the best person to beat Trump, if that's their end goal, which that's why they're in the game.
Dwight McKee, I got 30 seconds.
I think that our party, the party, has to take this very seriously, particularly young people who I think don't understand the gravity of what this decision is going to be for their future.
Dwight, hold on. I need you to stay with me till the other side of the break, because I want you to speak to some young people. I have more young people who are tuning into the show, and I'd like for you to explain that. Explain what you mean. In fact, Reverend Dyson and Attorney Hoffler, if you can stay with me just a couple more minutes to do that, we'll abbreviate my headlines because I'd like for each of you to take a couple of minutes, inside a couple of minutes apiece, to explain what the stakes are. Could you? Absolutely, because I'm concerned. Many of our young people they don't have the context for what this moment really means. When an MSNBC anchor can use the N word as we are memorializing one of the great icons in all of sport. And no one on the panel corrects her. No one in the control room tries to bleep it out. And she tries to really be untruthful about using the N word. And then the BBC used LeBron James' image instead of Kobe Bryant as they are memorializing Kobe Bryant. And then we're bringing up all of these personal issues about Kobe Bryant. I mean, my goodness, it was a rape case that was dropped. I think our young people need to get some context for these elections. 34 million of our votes were purged. Stacey Abrams is not the governor of Georgia because her votes were purged by the Republican, the loser, who sits in office right now. That's what I mean, Raymond. These losers keep winning. What is this? More of the Santita Jackson Show on WCPT in just a minute.
Wake up, Chicago. This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the second half of the Santita Jackson Show on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. As we barrel through these headlines, I asked my panel to stay just for a couple more minutes. I'm going to give them about a minute apiece to really explain the stakes in this election. As I go into these headlines, people, the progressives, are marching on Capitol Hill, Lady B. Hashtag we want witnesses. That is trending in social media, but it's also trending as people are going up on Capitol Hill. They're saying we want witnesses at this impeachment trial. And Fox News has unfriended John Bolton. Oh, my goodness. There's a 2020 survey from some of the top economists in the world who are saying that there is no lift in wage growth, no lift in economic growth, and no progress on unemployment in this year of low expectations. We have record employment, but they're underemployed, everybody. We need to talk about that. Bolton's book says that Trump tied the Ukraine military aid to the Biden probe, which is spurring 75% of Americans across all party lines, according to the Quinnipiac poll. 75% of Americans want America wants witnesses at this impeachment trial. Will that happen? Okay, everybody, I just said it before. Congressman Mark Meadows said that there will be repercussions if Republicans break with Donald Trump on impeachment. Verlon, I didn't say that. That's Mark Meadows who said that. President Trump said that people's heads would be on pikes if they went against him. I didn't say that. President Trump said that, everybody. So, the White House has issued a formal threat, speaking of threats, to Bolton to keep him from publishing the book. The National Security Council told him not to publish the book. He has published the book anyway. So, these are some of my headlines. So, everybody, let's get to it. The coronavirus. Well, now the United Kingdom is negotiating with China. They want to get their citizens out of Wuhan, but they want to bring them to England. I don't think they want them in England. What do you think, Lady B? Nope. No, this is really not funny. I mean, the death toll is spiking. It's spiking, and we're going to do this in the next few days. There's a Mississippi prison strike. The 13th inmate has died in less than a month amid this crisis in the prison system. We're going to talk about that.
Yes.
Everybody, we're going to be talking about John Bolton. Will he testify? Will he not testify? Should he testify? What do you think? But before my panel goes, I want to find out from you. I want you, if you can just sit and talk to some young people, say young people who are coming out of high school, some young people in their 20s, who ought to vote. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, give me a minute. Make an appeal to them.
Well, this is what I would say to young folks, because we were all there. We all sat in their shoes. We all sat in your shoes, being young. But when you come out of high school, when you come out of college, the first thing that you're looking at is, I mean, if you are tremendously wealthy and you don't need a loan, you got to get a student loan. So what's at stake in this election? What's going to happen with student loans? Am I going to be able to get a student loan? If I can't get a student loan, am I going to be able to go to college? That's first. Secondly, when I come out of college, can I get a job? Can I get a job? And when I'm out of college or when I'm in this country, am I comfortable with being in a country where the number one most powerful person, arguably in the world, our president, is comfortable with racial animus, with sexual animus, with cultural bias, and says that and breathes that and practices that every single day and representing this country and representing you? That's what you got to think of. Is that okay with you? Whether you're black, brown, white, or whatever your persuasion, that should make you feel some kind of way like you need to vote. And then finally, voting. With all of these across the country, millions of people who have been purged from the polls and don't even know it. The right to vote. You all have grown up and not known what it's like not to have the right to vote, not known what it's like for people to die for the right to vote. That's where we are again, and that's where we're going to be. So I urge young folks, you all are the leaders of the future. Say, no, this is not acceptable. This is not acceptable. Enough is enough, and get out and vote.
Marcia Dyson, Reverend Marcia Dyson, what say you?
There's the song, and you know it, I believe that children are our future. But if we look at the civil rights activism in the past, those young people were right there and very present. We need our young people present. There will be no future, not only for them, but their parents and their grandparents and their children yet unborn. What young people need to do, first of all, is become educated on their rights as American citizens as it relates to every electoral process in this country. Know what power that you have, because even if you do have access to student loans or to inroads into getting some entrepreneurial opportunities, you still will be under the burden of legislation that comes out of the administration, no matter who the president might be. And I don't want you to operate under fear. This is not a fear moment. This is a strength moment. And strength comes in numbers, and strength comes in information. So know your rights. Join some organization that if you're ill-informed, you can be better informed. Look and read the policies of the people who you think can best benefit your intent and purposes and issues concerns in your life. And it has to be more than about beating somebody, because right now we have within our Democrat Party truly an enemy scene squabbling that we're going to be petty and be like children in a high school playground or a locker room taking videos of them doing that, and the person to whom you're trying to be is going to be the one who will end up being the king of the prom. And I don't think you really want that based upon this conversation that we've had, what the previous speaker just talked about. Your future is hanging in the balance based upon your being a informed voting citizen. Get out and vote with information and knowledge.
Dwight McKee, you've got the final word.
I think that the worst mistake that this generation could make is to take democracy for granted. What the president's lawyers argued yesterday was not that he was above the law, is that he is the law. And that is a precursor to fascism. Not only is it a precursor to fascism, it is a fascist that find everything about their generation, about particularly the black kids, in abject contempt, who wants to run amok against their freedoms, their right to vote, their right to have voice, and to lock them down based on his attitude and his predisposition to be an elitist and think that anybody other than his peers are unworthy.
Oh, no, please continue. Please continue.
I think that
Mr. Fine up too early.
Before they let the genie out the bottle, they need to really do a due diligence on the genie
he was supposed
and figure out what kind of havoc that he can put on the world, not just America, but the world stage.
I put that on the sheet.
And it behooves them. Not only are we counting on them to be diligent and to stop this madman, the whole world is counting on them to be diligent and stop this madman, because almost everybody in the world understands what the stakes are and what the risks are and how vulnerable they are, hoping that our young people also have that same sense of urgency and that same sense of involvement and that same sense of responsibility to protect the world from a madman.
I want to thank you all for being with us today. You've given us a whole lot to think about, and I hope that everybody will get involved in this 2020 election. And we're doing it within the context, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, as I bid you all adieu, and Dwight McKee and Reverend Marcia Dyson. Boy, what a great panel you have been. We're talking about John Bolton. John Bolton, he seems to be the linchpin, everybody. The person whose testimony upon which this whole impeachment trial could turn. Will he testify? Won't he testify? But first, let's find out who he is as we welcome Phyllis Bennis to the show from the Institute for Policy Studies. Coming up, we will have Ron Fine. He's the legal director of Free Speech for People. He's got a fantastic book, everybody. And this book, get a load of this. The Constitution Demands It. The case for the impeachment of Donald Trump. We are so excited to have you on the show, Ron Fine. How are you? Ray, but let's first pull up Phyllis Bennis. Phyllis Bennis, how you doing? Tell me, who is John Bolton? It seems like he was such a controversial figure before he became the head of our security. He became National Security Advisor. Who was he? Who is he? Hmm.
Said that the solution to an Iranian bomb, which of course Iran didn't have a bomb, is to bomb Iran. He called for war directly with North Korea and said that the best solution would be for the U.S. and China to collaborate in allowing South Korea to take over North Korea, to just invade and wipe out the government in North Korea and take it over, something which of course South Korea wants no part of, nor does China. He's a longtime supporter of the group known as the MEK, which is a kind of cultish Iranian opposition group that during the years of the Iran-Iraq War, when people on both sides were being slaughtered in huge numbers, and the U.S., of course, was supporting Iraq against Iran, although it later provided some arms to Iran as well, the MEK people lived in Iraq and fought on the side of Iraq under Saddam Hussein against their own country. They're much hated now in Iran. He is someone who, as Undersecretary, it was a very ironic title, he was the Undersecretary for Arms Control during the George Bush administration, and one of his great accomplishments was to get the U.S. to orchestrate the removal of the head of the UN's chemical weapons inspection agency, which was designed to monitor and eliminate chemical weapons. And he thought the guy was doing his job a little too well. So he orchestrated his ouster, tried to do the same thing, but failed with the inspectors of the UN's nuclear watchdog agency. And then famously, when he was temporarily appointed UN ambassador under Bush wasn't able, because Bolton was understood to be so extreme, such a warmonger, he wasn't able to get Republican support to approve him to become the actual UN ambassador to the UN. So he sneaked him in through this thing called a recess appointment, which means when Congress isn't meeting, like on a weekend or something, the president can sneak through a temporary appointment without getting congressional approval, and that appointment will only last till the end of that congressional period. So luckily for all of us and for the United Nations, Bolton was only the ambassador to the UN for about a little over a year. But during that time, it was stunning to be around the UN. People were terrified of him, not just because of the policies he was representing, which was this was in the early years, some of the worst years of the U.S. war in Iraq, the occupation of Iraq, the slaughter of civilians. It was a horrible time. Many countries in the UN were trying desperately to figure out how to come out against the U.S. war. It was sort of too late by then. But he orchestrated the U.S. being pulled out of having signed the treaty to join the International Criminal Court. Said that was one of the best days of his life, was unsigning that treaty. This is someone who stands for war. He's not even, Santita, we hear about him being a neocon. And in many ways, I think it's not really the right, it's not quite the right description of him, because neocons who tend to support war at all times, what they would call a muscular U.S. policy and what I would call warmongering, but they also have visions, in my view, completely illegitimate, but visions nonetheless, of how to transform the countries where they want to go to war. Regime change, and we're going to replace it with a regime that looks just like ours. Well, we know how well that works. But somebody like Bolton has absolutely no interest in what comes later. He just wants the power. He wants to use military power. Years ago, in 1994, I debated John Bolton along with the great Erskine Childers, who was one of the early champions of the United Nations and of multilateralism. And Erskine and I were opposing John Bolton in a big debate setting about the UN. And it was in that debate that Bolton said what has become his rather infamous tagline about there is no such thing as the United Nations. There's only this group of countries that sometimes when the U.S. tells them what to do, sometimes will do the right thing. And he went on to say that the 38-story UN headquarters building in New York City, that you could lop off the top 10 floors and no one would notice the difference because it never does anything, leaving out the whole question of humanitarian work, of the World Health Organization, of UNICEF, you know, all of these anti-UN positions that he's become so infamous for spouting. And I remember being just stunned at the time. He wasn't anybody in power at that time. He was a policy wonk at the right-wing American Enterprise Institute. But even in that position of no power and just being essentially a pundit, we were stunned to hear him. I was up on the stage in this debate, and I'm looking out at this audience of almost 1,000 people. People's jaws dropped hearing him say this stuff. And he has never changed. He has never changed. He's very consistent. So on the one hand, it's not surprising that he has absolutely certainly no loyalty to President Trump. Clearly, most people working for Trump don't have much loyalty for some of the right reasons. But in this context, there's just a terrible irony that the person who, the progressives and the Democrats, they're not necessarily the same, are looking to provide, finally, a direct, in-the-room piece of evidence that confirms what everybody knows, that there was indeed a quid pro quo, that President Trump did say, I don't want to release the aid money to Ukraine until they launch an investigation against my political rivals. Period, full stop. It's the definition of a quid pro quo. And it appears, so far at least, that the only one who Trump said that to directly, in his own words, in his own voice, was John Bolton, the warmonger. So there's this terrible irony in the emerging dependence on Bolton as potentially a star witness against the right-wing Republicans that are trying to defend Trump. There's something just very bizarre about it.
Well, as we anticipate whether he will testify or not, what should we be on the lookout for, just in terms of who he is in this final minute?
Well, unfortunately, I'm afraid that none of his history is going to emerge in any of these discussions. The Democrats are treating him as if he's, some kind of a hero, as if he's a whistleblower that's trying to undermine Trump, which at the personal level may well be true, but it's not in defense of any position that would challenge Trump's wars. So I think, what I would like to see, and I haven't seen it yet, I don't know if we will, is a sense of nuance, a sense from commentators, a sense from members of Congress to say, it's important that this man testified because he was in the room. It makes sense that Trump would say it to him because he was such a warmonger, Trump would be more likely to trust him. So ironically, his terrible policy positions give him a kind of credibility that others might not have, only because he's someone you could imagine Trump would feel comfortable with, someone who espouses that kind of not just America first, but America only, that kind of American exceptionalism that is rooted in military power at the highest level, without any regard for civilian casualties, for the destruction of countries, and it makes it more likely that he should be believed in something like this. That's the irony of all this. But we don't see any discussion of who Bolton is. All we're hearing is that he was the former national security advisor, and he was in the room. That's all true, and it should be enough. But if we were serious about understanding where this process came from and what are the threats to the world by the continuing policies of this administration and earlier administrations, we need to keep in mind what is represented by these individuals who suddenly come to the fore on the front page of every newspaper in the country and many around the world as a whistleblower who's prepared to say that President Trump's lawyers are lying when they say that there is no evidence that he ever said these things. Here's the evidence that he said it.
Phyllis Bennis, thank you so much for being with us. The always brilliant and illuminating Phyllis Bennis of the Institute for Policy Studies. I think it's important as we anticipate his testimony, as we see the fight as to whether he will be allowed to testify or not. And I think it's important for us to know who he is. And no one is talking about that.
For his ability to testify, we'll keep in mind what he actually represents. He should testify, and we should understand why it turns out he was the most direct, the person with the most direct access to this particular president. Thank you, Santita.
Always a joy, always a pleasure. You know, coming up, we're going to have Ron Fine. Ron Fine. Oh, boy. Free speech for people. And before we go, I wanted to get some thoughts from Dwight McKee. Dwight McKee has always been so on point. When I'm trying to figure out all of this madness that I see, I call him. Dwight McKee, I've got a couple of minutes before we go to break. What should we be looking for?
Well, I think she used the right word, is the irony of it all, is that ultimately we may be dependent upon a demagogue for our own salvation, is that John Bolton is ideological, Donald Trump is transitional, and that's where the conflict is between them, is John Bolton had a strategy in mind for world subjugation in behalf of America, the United States. He's a neoconservative. Donald Trump had world domination and subjugation to himself. And so they have an inherent conflict. One is a real patriot, and the other one is a narcissist. And so I think that strategically what John Bolton is trying to do is actually to sabotage Trump's presidency, because he does not believe in transitional politics. He believes in ideological politics. And I think that the reason that Trump is fighting so hard to keep him out is because he knows he has the goods. He knows he was in the room, and he knows what he said. And so, as ironic as it is, and I'm like the sister that just spoke, is we're rooting for the first time that I can ever remember for John Bolton to have a platform.
I never thought I'd see the day. I never thought I'd see the day when Democrats said the FBI has a lot of integrity and conservatives would be attacking them. I mean, Dwight, help me. What's happening? What kind of world are we in? Where's that Twilight music, Lady B?
Right.
It's the Bravo world that used to be in the Superman comic books. What's up is up, and what's up is down, and what's down is up. It's a very strange situation.
Ooh, Dwight. Oh boy. Well, you know, we'll see if Ron Fine can help us to make sense of it all. He is absolutely brilliant, legal director for Free Speech for People. And you know what? He says, look, his book is The Constitution Demands It. The Case for the Impeachment of Donald Trump. What is going on? We're sitting up here rooting for John Bolton. You can't make this stuff up, boy. In 2020, I see clearly now that everything is upside down. More of the Santita Jackson Show. Meet us over on Facebook on the Santita Jackson and Friends page, and over on YouTube on the Santita Jackson Show. More of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, 773-763. WCPT 773-763-9278. But you all know that because the lines are full. And so we want you to keep calling. And please join us over on Facebook on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Like and share, and then scoot on over to YouTube, where more and more of you are joining every day on the Santita Jackson Show. Please like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. You're going to be getting more content as we go forward. We're talking about the impeachment trial. Specifically, will John Bolton testify? Will he be allowed to testify? Will enough moderate Republicans, or, well, really Republicans who are in electoral trouble, because that's really what it will come down to, is nobody's doing this on principle. It seems not the Republicans anyway. Unfortunately, because I do believe you have principled people all over the place, in all parties, but they're not behaving that way now. They're just trying to protect their party and the president, and this is just not right. We have Dwight McKee has stayed with us. I'm so glad, but we have our special guest, Dwight. We have to welcome him to the show for the first time. Brilliant lawyer, the legal director for Free Speech for People. And he has a book, The Constitution Demands It. As soon as I saw the title, I said, Amazon, you got my money. The Case for Impeachment of Donald Trump. He said, the Constitution, you say the Constitution demands it. Free speech for people. You work to renew our democracy and our United States Constitution. Ron Fine, welcome to the show. I remember when we used to take a class in the Constitution. I wonder if the kids do that anymore. Why is this a constitutional issue, the impeachment of Donald Trump, before I can even get to John Bolton?
Well, thank you for having me on. It's a great privilege. And the reason that this is such an important constitutional issue is that the Constitution is the text and the principles that bind us as a nation. There are other countries where maybe everyone has a shared ancestry, shared religion, but we're a diverse country. People of different backgrounds, and what keeps us together is this set of principles. And one of those most important principles is that the president is not a king. He's not above the law. He doesn't get to run the government to do whatever he wants for his own personal benefit, but rather he works for us. And while people may disagree with the president on particular policies, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a president who crossed the line and misused his official office to try to get a foreign government to help with his own re-election.
Then let me ask you this. This back and forth about John Bolton, is that like the linchpin? It seems like so much is turning on his testimony. Now, what's going on there?
Well, part of the reason that John Bolton seems to have become the linchpin is that Trump's strategy has made him so, because in the Nixon impeachment proceedings, many top White House officials testified during the various Watergate proceedings, whereas Trump has tried to block everyone from cooperating with first the House and now the Senate. So the difference is that John Bolton was in the room where it happened, and as bizarre as many of his foreign policy views seem to be, he does seem to have some sense of the proper limits of the office of the president, and seems to be willing to talk, or at least to sell his book. So if he is willing to testify before the Senate, as he seems to be, he's the one who can say what Trump said, what Trump did, is not going to be relying on hearsay or secondhand information, and Trump knows that, and Trump is worried.
Should we be worried? I mean, because look at how the Republicans are behaving, and I'm not someone, I have to be, this is the first time you and I have met. I don't fall down. I'm an independent Democrat, but as they say, I'm a Baptist too, and I'm so glad God isn't a Baptist. So I tend to be kind of agnostic about principle. That is to say, I want people to behave in a principled way, whether they're Republicans, Democrats, or Independents. What are the Republicans doing? What are they being obedient to, Ron Fine?
They are in the thrall of what almost seems like a cult of Trump, to the point where John Bolton, who is as diehard a Republican as you are going to find, who served in multiple Republican administrations, who's not by any stretch considered a moderate, but rather very rock-ribbed, you might say, in his views, and so can't be painted as a deep state employee. He's the one that Trump himself picked for the National Security Advisor. Certainly can't be painted as a Democrat or a liberal. And he seems to have information that would be impossible for the Republican senators to ignore. So what they're really worried about is they are trying to avoid having to face what they all know.
What do they know? I mean, because this is the election. Do you think the fact that this is 2020, a presidential election year, is this making it more difficult, or they are really, we hear the announcement that McConnell doesn't have the votes to stop witnesses from testifying, and now there's this. It seems like he might have secured the votes. What is going on?
The election certainly must play a part in their minds, and there it's the primary election more than the general election that they're worried about. That if they cross Trump in any way, we heard that he threatened to put their heads on pikes, and certainly willing to campaign against anyone from within his own party who would vote against him. So they're afraid, many of them, of stepping out of line, and the infrastructure of the party makes that possible. And the ones who have any principles aren't showing it, aren't stepping forth. So I think the reality is that there are many principled Republicans who understand the importance of the rule of law. They just happen not to be sitting in the United States Senate.
Ouch. But, that's so true. And I see Mitt Romney the spirit of his father trying to come on through when he's like, at least I'm going to ask questions. But I'm like, Mitt Romney, Senator Romney, you're not doing anything. This is not helping. This is not helping. Before I go to the callers, and before I want you to meet Dwight McKee, before I have him comment, what is the danger of this heavily partisan process that we're watching? I mean, or is it just something that we should? I just think it's dangerous. Correct me if you think I'm wrong.
What's extremely dangerous about it is the particular defense that the Trump administration is taking in their defense. So had they defended by saying the facts are wrong, this simply didn't happen, we agree that this would have been terrible if it had happened, it just didn't happen, that would be one thing. And that would be the type of case where witnesses, of course, would be the deciding factor. But instead, we heard Alan Dershowitz, professor of law at Harvard Law School until his recent retirement, stand on the Senate floor and say that basically anything that the president deems is in his interest in getting reelected is therefore also in the national interest, and therefore he can do essentially anything he wants to as long as he thinks it will help his own reelection. And that puts us in very scary territory.
Absolutely. Let me go to Pete. What's on your mind, Pete?
Hi, good morning, Santita. I'll make it really, really quick. What we're missing is this. Alan Schiff for years said he's got ample evidence. He's got plenty of evidence. He went to move with the Mueller investigation. They tried to get him for so many different things, and they keep putting the goalposts further and further down the field as though this testimony is going to win them the world. Even if Bolton does testify, nothing will happen with this. And for that reason, the Democrats aren't being honest with everybody. Trump is not going to be removed. We can't find 4 people that are not going to get 20 or 21. Therefore, all they're trying to do is smear Trump. That's all they're trying to do. They're not going to get the ultimate goal, which is removal. So even if Bolton does testify, Cynthia, it does not matter. It's like, we just need this one more caveat. We've been doing this for years, but John Bolton's going to make the ultimate decision-making. He's going to change everything. And after he testifies, nothing is going to happen. It's going to be a lot more time, and the American people are going to go through a lot more things, and you know what's going to happen? Absolutely nothing. They just want to smear Trump, and that's it.
Well, before I get to my second caller, I mean, what do you say to that, Ron Fine, and then you, Dwight McKee? Why don't you respond too, Pete, he represents a body of people.
I think there is a grain of truth in what he said, to the extent that it's quite possible that if John Bolton does testify, that it is not going to affect the ultimate vote count on removal by much, certainly not enough to get it to the 67 vote threshold. So in that sense, Pete is probably right. But I disagree to the extent that it is therefore not important to try to get John Bolton to testify, and for that matter, for the House to continue to hold Trump accountable with its part of the impeachment power, because the House has a duty, independent of whatever the Senate is or is not going to do, to lay down a marker for what is considered unacceptable conduct in a president, of which, of course, this is just, these two articles of impeachment are just two examples. But whatever the Senate is going to do, that the House still needs to make its voice known for posterity, because if the House won't even do that, then that really suggests that we're giving up on these constitutional principles.
Dwight McKee, before I go to the next caller, what do you have to say?
I totally agree, is that if John Bolton testifies, at some levels, it's a victory. And if he doesn't testify at a major level, it's a loss. Because what they are challenging, they being the Trump administration, is the right of anybody to even testify against them, the right for witnesses to show up. And what that says is that there's not just an assault on the First Amendment, which is the right for people to speak, but that they exercise sole right to decide who has a right to speak, which is about as dangerous situation as you can be in. And you would think a guy like Dershowitz, who comes out of a fascist background, who is Jewish, whose people were exalted by this mentality 50, 60, 70 years ago, you would think he, more than anybody else, would be a disciple of democracy. He, more than anybody else, would be intimidated by one man saying, "I am now the law." It perplexes me that, given his background, he could even take that position.
I don't know. Normally, he's so brilliant. I mean, whatever you feel about his political positions, he is a brilliant lawyer, brilliant legal tactician. What do you think is going on, Ron Fine? It just seems like people are all over the place.
Yeah, there's something going on with Alan Dershowitz, and I don't have the exact answer, and I don't know if anyone does.
I don't think anybody does.
Something happened to him, and he's gone off the rails in some way. It may be that he has an addiction to fame, and this was his way of keeping himself on national television. But whatever it is, he is claiming from his perch and privilege and position as a professor of law emeritus at Harvard Law School, positions about the Constitution that no one who has looked at the document or any of the history agrees with. And he is doing so in a particularly dangerous way by basically enabling Donald Trump, or for that matter, any future president, to do whatever they want to if they think it will help get them reelected.
Unbelievable. Chaparral, what's on your mind?
Hey, Santita, thank you so much for taking my call. I want to say that, first of all, Dershowitz has been Epstein. They have the goods on this man, so they can pretty much tell him what he needs to do in order to keep the lid on what him and Epstein and Trump and all of them were doing. So I think that's why he has basically flipped from who he was, because he needs them to protect him from going to jail. That's my first point. Now, Bolton, I've been listening to these questions that the senators have been asking, and how the Trump attorneys have deflected so much, and they have not answered not one question honestly or fully in this whole answer question session. And they are basically telling America this president is above the law, and there's nothing that you can do to stop him. And so when I think about John Bolton testifying, if McConnell, they said McConnell has the votes now. They said that there's not going to be any more witnesses, there's not going to be any more evidence. So basically, they're thumbing their nose at the Constitution and they're letting Trump get away with murder. And my thing is that we as American citizens need to have a serious uprising and actually demand for something to happen. You know, I've been calling the senators, not the ones that are in my district, but the other ones who are actually able to make this change. And that's what we have to do. We have to get on the phone and demand that we have witnesses and evidence, because we need to know what's going on. We need to know, we need to protect this Constitution and protect our democracy, because this is what's going on. And I hear what Pete is saying, that they're not going to kick him out. And you know what, Pete? It's a damn shame if they don't, because he's guilty as hell and he needs to go.
Candor, always from Chaparral. Let me go to Robin from Boulder, Colorado. Robin, how you doing, Robin?
Good morning. I have I have a question, and then I'll leave you with a thought. My question to your guest is, okay, John Bolton is not part of the administration anymore. Trump threw him under the bus months ago. He can't claim executive privilege over him anymore, or do I have it wrong? What's to stop Bolton from just saying, I don't need your permission, I'm going to do this? What's to stop John Bolton from even going public at this point in time with what he knows? Just, you know, holding a press conference and saying, okay, they're not going to call me in as a witness. I mean, not that I'm on this guy's side or anything, but I mean, really, what is there to prevent him from doing that? And then, I mean, I will hang up to listen to the answer, but I just want to say, John Lennon once said that in the end, everything will be okay. And if it's not okay, it's not the end.
Amen to that. Well, Ron Fine, why don't you respond to Robin?
There is absolutely nothing stopping John Bolton from testifying. Executive privilege does not apply when somebody who's not even in the administration anymore wants to testify voluntarily. And he certainly could give a press conference. He could go on the evening news. I think that he is probably trying to hold some of that back, honestly, because he wants to juice up sales for his book. So I think we shouldn't be overly optimistic about the purity of his motives here. But I do think he will tell the truth when he finally tells it. I don't think he intends to lie under oath. And I think his book is going to come out, and we're going to find out this information anyway. So let's find it out while the impeachment trial is still ongoing so it can make a difference.
Let me go to Fred from L.A. Fred, what's on your mind? Welcome.
Hello?
Fred, what's on your mind? Calling from Los Angeles very early in the morning.
I've got to make 2 points, Santita. You said 75% of the people want to call. I'm going to respond to 2 points. Number one, this is an overreach by the House of Representatives. This is about separation of powers. The House has overstepped its bounds, and the Senate put them in place last night. The President's lawyers did.
Well, no, hold on. Stay right there. Let's take this part piece by piece. Ron Fine, did the House of Representatives overstep their bounds?
No, I don't see it in any way. They deliberated on articles of impeachment. They passed them. They presented them to the Senate, and the managers of the House have been conducting their part of the trial in a thorough and professional manner. I have some disagreements with their strategy, but I don't think they overstepped their bounds in any way.
Fred?
They have no right to come in and tell the Senate what to do. The prosecution is supposed to be ready. I've been on jury duty 4 times. I'll make my last point because I know time's of the essence. They did not charge the president with a crime such as 187 PC. That's murder. That's a high crime. If you have no crime, you can have no trial and you can have no witnesses until they charge the president with a statutory crime. To quote Jerry Nadler, you can have no impeachment.
Ron, what do you have to say to that?
This is the Dershowitz argument. Unfortunately, it's in order to accept that argument, you have to say that not only are all of the historians who have looked at impeachment wrong. You have to say that James Madison didn't understand the Constitution. James Madison was called the father of the Constitution. You have to say that Alexander Hamilton didn't understand the Constitution, and of course he was instrumental in getting it ratified. You have to say that Supreme Court justices over the past 2 centuries and Congress, which has repeatedly impeached officials for non-criminal conduct, has never understood the Constitution. And that's just implausible. So there are certainly some standards for when something has to be a high crime and misdemeanor. It can't be a trivial offense like jaywalking. But we have history going back to even before the Constitution and continuing since its writing and ratification that makes it very clear that impeachable offenses can be crimes under statutes, but they don't have to be. And these are examples here where they might not need to be. But quite frankly, the articles of impeachment that were introduced in the Senate, both of them allege crimes. They may not have used the terms, but the first article sets out all of the elements of bribery, which has been a crime for hundreds of years and certainly is now. And the second article sets forth the elements of obstruction of justice, which is also a crime. So the fact that the House hasn't portrayed it as setting forth statutory crimes, it doesn't mean that they aren't serious high crimes and misdemeanors.
Dwight?
One of the purposes of an impeachment is to find out if a crime has been perpetrated. And so that is the reason that everybody's fighting over the witness issue, is because the witnesses can testify that they were in the room if a crime had been perpetrated. These Republican guys contradict themselves so profoundly to me that I don't think they even read the Constitution. Because to say that he needs not, that they need not have people, that he not be on trial because he has not been charged with a crime, and at the same time say that witnesses shouldn't be called because they can substantiate the fact of a crime, is the ultimate contradiction to me.
Everybody stay with me. You know, I'm gonna let you go, Ron Fine, because I want you to come back. And I want boy, oh boy, I've got about a minute. Ron Fine, what's your final thought with this audience? The author of The Constitution Demands It, the case for the impeachment of Donald Trump.
Well, thank you so much, Santita, for having me on. I think the final thought we need to linger with is that no matter what happens in this impeachment trial, the House has done its part by saying where the line is, and this will not stand. And to remember also that President Trump has committed other impeachable offenses. In fact, starting from the very first day of his presidency, because he didn't separate himself from his businesses, he's been taking money from foreign governments. And we have several years now of different forms of corruption and abuse of power. This wasn't the first time he crossed the line, and it won't be the last.
Everybody, blessings and love to you. Stay right here on the YouTube page of the Santita Jackson Show. Like and subscribe, and Santita Jackson and Friends on Facebook. And keep listening to us. And Dwight McKee's going to be with me for just a few more minutes as we take all of this apart. The impeachment trial is not over yet. You need to call your senators. You need to call them and let them know that you want some witnesses. You need to let them know. Many of them are in trouble. I mean, they are vulnerable. Mitch McConnell is at a 29% approval rating all across the country, 37% in his own state. You should call. More of the Santita Jackson Show until tomorrow. On behalf of me, Lady B, and Cortez, our intern, and Zoe on the other side of the glass, God bless you. Be back in just 24 hours.
Save up to $5 on Medicare
Say goodbye to Mr.
Preferred
Fine.
Pharmacy. Copay savings on Tier 1 generic drugs available through select plans that include Walgreens as a preferred pharmacy.
Dershowitz argues every politician conflates his own interest with the public.
And if a president does something which he believes will help him get elected in the public interest, that cannot be the kind of quid pro quo that results in impeachment.
I'm taking my vitamins,
Lead
everybody.
House prosecutor Adam Schiff appeared stunned.
All quid pros are not the same. Some are legitimate and some are corrupt, and you don't need to be a mind reader to figure out which is which.
Adding, you can ask John Bolton. Democrats continue pushing for the former Trump National Security Advisor and other witnesses to testify, but Republicans seem intent on ending the trial with a vote to acquit the president.
We'll be right back, everybody.
Just months until the election, and our new AP poll finds the most Democrats are feeling anxious, but fewer than half of Republicans are nervous. Republicans are also more likely to say they're excited about the election. The new virus that so far has killed more than 170 people in China and sickened thousands more there has led to several cases in the U.S. Meanwhile, the CDC is monitoring almost 200 Americans who just returned from China on a flight chartered by the U.S. government. The CDC's Dr. Chris Braden.
We're going to be monitoring them twice a day with symptoms and fever checks. At the end of 3 days, we think we'll have enough information to know their status and their risk.
The economy grew at a moderate 2.1% in the final 3 months of 2019, according to the Commerce Department. For the whole year, the GDP increased 2.3%. That's the weakest performance in 3 years, and a slowdown from a 2.9 gain in 2018. This is AP News. Kobe Bryant's widow is thanking the public for its support.
In her first public statement since the helicopter crash Sunday that killed her husband Kobe and 13-year-old daughter Gianna, Vanessa Bryant writes on Instagram, "Thank you for all the prayers. We definitely need them." Vanessa Bryant also announced a fund is being formed to help support the families of the other 7 victims in the crash. The Los Angeles Lakers, for whom Kobe Bryant played for 20 years, held a media availability after practice Wednesday. Lakers coach Frank Vogel.
We're all deeply saddened by this unthinkable tragedy.
So far, there has been no announcement on funeral or memorial plans for Kobe and Gianna Bryant. I'm Mike Gracio.
Jerry Seinfeld is working on a new book. Simon & Schuster says the new book does not have a title yet, but it's going to come out October 6th. It apparently goes back decades in comedy to the 1970s when he was a college student and emerging nightclub comic. I'm Rita Foley, AP News.
This is 8:20 a.m. WCPT Willow Springs and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now your WCPT 820 Chicago traffic update.
Southbound Lakeshore Drive, we're now seeing slow traffic from Foster to Michigan Avenue. Northbound traffic, 18th Drive to Monroe. Northbound Tri-State delays are Archer to 75th, and from the Reagan Toll way to the Grand Avenue curve. Southbound, we see congestion still from 21 to past 137. Northbound Veterans Memorial at 70, from Fountain Toll to the Reagan Tollway at Army Trail to 290. Southbound 53, traffic slow, Peloton to Kershaw. Edens, 20 minutes, Lake Hook to the junction. Kennedy, 46 minutes, O'Hare to downtown. Eisenhower, from 390 to downtown, it's 50 minutes. Crash at Church Road on the right shoulder. Stevenson, 50 minutes, 355 to Lakeshore Drive. The Bryant, 28 minutes from 95th to downtown. That's traffic. I'm Jim Pelamonte.
Want to hear something amazing? Discover matches all the cash back you earn at the end of your first year automatically, with no limit to how much they'll match. Millions of people a year are getting their cash back matched. Discover Cash Back Match. What are you waiting for? Learn more at discover.com/cashbackmatch.
Diabetes, high blood pressure, anxiety meds, everyone's on them. If you're a 50-year-old male, maybe a bit beefy, or even with type 2 diabetes, $1 million of term insurance may only cost you about $200 a month. Affordable term life insurance is out there. Call Term Provider and speak with Big Lou at 800-481-1458, 800-481-1458, or visit biglou.com. Remember, Big Lou's like you. He's on meds too.
Roses are red, violets are blue. Your smile is so important, so invest in you. This is Dr. Anna Pellick from Total Dentistry in Palatine. Just think of how long your smile can last compared to a car, a vacation, or a smartphone. Just think of how important your smile is every day at home, work, and social activities. When you do the math, the average person spends less than $1 a day over their lifespan for a healthy, aesthetic smile. That's less than a cup of coffee. Now that's a long-term investment with a great rate of return. And with the latest technologies, it's easy and affordable to get the smile you've been waiting for. So why procrastinate? Why suffer with pain, bad breath, and/or embarrassment? Isn't your smile and confidence worth $1 a day? Call us and put the equity in your smile today. Make the investment in you. Total Dentistry, 847-358-2477, or visit us at totaldentistry.org. Total Dentistry, a general dental practice like no other.
Save up to $5 on Medicare Part D copays when Walgreens is your preferred pharmacy. Copay savings on Tier 1 generic drugs available through select plans that include Walgreens as a preferred pharmacy.
It's the Stephanie Miller Show.
This is my fight song. Take back my life song. Prove I'm my right song. And I don't really care if nobody else believes. 'Cause I've still got a lot of fight left in me.
Pardon me. Now the Sexy Liberal Tour has begun. Chris and I are just arranging to get a coronavirus and kill ourselves by going on the road constantly in the next year. Be careful what you ask for. I'm like, go, go, go. Let's do more. What? Wow. Okay.
That's a lot.
Okay. Ha! Here we go. Dwight McKee? Dwight McKee? Dwight? Roosevelt, how you doing, sweetie? And is Dwight, are you still there?
He must have stepped.
Oh, okay. You know what? I want to have a quick roundup about what we talked about today. Dwight, you're always brilliant. What's on your mind, Roosevelt? We covered the waterfront here as we're moving into this presidential season. What's on your mind?
What I wanted to talk about is precisely what you guys are talking about, the impeachment and the elections in general. And I don't think anybody's brought this up. We have a short memory, and we've come a long way, Santita. Remember how a lot of progressive Democrats were getting desperate with Pelosi and saying, how come she hasn't moved to impeach? So at the time, she said, if I remember correctly, she said the country is not with us yet. Now, look where we are at now. 75% of independents want witnesses, specifically Bolton. I believe 70% of Republicans, I could be wrong about that, but 90% of the Democrats. All this is doing is changing public opinion enough to cost Trump the election. That's my opinion.
Dwight, what do you have to say?
I think that for me, this is just me talking now, the danger is not whether Trump is impeached or not impeached. Because I think that ultimately, if he gets out of this, there has to be a reckoning at the polls. I think the danger are the arguments which surrounds him not being impeached, which is that he is not just above the law, he is the law. That's the precedent that is, I think, the ultimate threat to democracy, is that if it takes out of pocket the way they set the country up, which is to be governed by three bodies. It takes the legislation out of pocket, the legislative out of pocket, and it takes the courts out of pocket. It makes the executive branch the supreme body constitutionally and makes every other governing body subservient to the executive. And the executive body are also elected to office, just like the president is. And so it cuts off the the process by which the people have a chance to speak. Because ultimately, only a certain amount of people are going to vote for the president. And if he has ultimate authority, it means that they have the ultimate voice, and the other people who also voted in elections for their local candidates have no say. It's a dangerous precedent.
And yet, Dershowitz was really arguing yesterday, almost for complete, for the president to have just unsurpassed power, which to me is so dangerous, right? I mean, explain what America would look like when a president has unchecked powers.
Well, I think that the system may have hit that one out the park. I've forgotten that he's complicitous in the sex scandal, and that he was one of the guys who was a candidate for baptism when they were chasing those little young girls on the island. And so part of this may be his commitment to try to protect himself in that scandal. I think all of these guys, there has to be some personal motive in their positions, because constitutionally and legally it makes no sense. None. So there has to be some personal incentive that these guys have in this. I think with Giuliani is probably the money, and it could be with Dershowitz, his exposure in this sex scandal with Epstein.
My kingdom for a horse. I think I heard some brilliant writer say that once. I mean, I'm just wondering if we're going to lose the country, this precious, fragile, yet strong, sturdy republic, for the personal foibles of people and or their personal ambitions. I think this is a very, very tender time. And what would America look like with a president who is not checked by the two branches of government? That is not what the founding fathers had in mind. That is not what the framers of the Constitution had in mind, Dwight.
I would rather them have a real trial and he walk and they find him not guilty than for them to circumvent the whole process of being able to hold him accountable and to bring witnesses up to bear witness in terms of what they saw and what they experienced.
You know, I agree with you, because I think that exoneration, hey, I wouldn't like it, I wouldn't agree with it, but I can live with it. But I can live with losing if it's fair. I would have a hard time winning if I felt I cheated my way there, because there's no pride in it. And you have none of these senators want to go on camera and talk to you about it. I mean, it's the funniest thing to watch the media almost chasing them through the hall or watching them run past these microphones. This is terrible, Dwight.
Well, the Astros managers just got fired week before last because it was clear that they had cheated to win the championship. And so without a long process, the owner said, I have to fire these guys because they take the process. And there was a call for them to give the trophies back because they had won based on dishonest terms. If the baseball team has that level of accountability, why would the President of the United States have no accountability? And that's why I say I'd rather him be exonerated, working through a true process, than him saying, well, I'm the president, I call the balls, and I'm not just the batter, I'm the umpire. And so I call the balls and the strikes. And I call safe and out. Is it really baseball if the batter's making all of the calls? It is a danger to everything that we stand for. The arguments that they've had in terms of this guy being not just above the law, but him being the law.
Dwight, what is our takeaway? And now I'm very, very interested in us talking to younger people. I think that we should have a broader conversation with everybody. But now I've got what my brother Yusef has 5 kids, Jesse 2, Jonathan 3. I have 10 nieces and nephews, and then I have got 5 godchildren. One of whom is on her way to college, and now over the past, we've always been very close, but now as they go into adulthood, they have questions that are becoming increasingly mature. And I have one of my goddaughters is very, very, very politically astute, and she's from a very, very, very prominent political family. But she's and she's very astute, very, very involved, and she asks some really profound questions, and she demands answers. You can't dance around with her. So she's following this impeachment, even though she's in school. She gets home and she's keeping up with this every day. And I'm wondering how you explain this to our children. The Bible says that the way is so plain that even a child can understand it. And when you step away from this, if I can understand this, it seems like there is a lot that's underneath the surface that is really dishonest, Dwight. And that is more than that is destructive to the republic that has these democratic aspects. There's something here that's really dangerous. I think that the president is undoing some norms that are really going to imperil our way of life, Dwight.
I totally agree. And one writer say that if power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. And I think we're on the verge of seeing power absolutely corrupt. And the sad part is that those group of men who have been preordained in some senses, it seems, to be the guardians of democracy and to be the guardians of fairness, and who has been elected for the sake of the people having been able to keep their elected guys, the guys that they put in office, to keep them accountable and to hold other folk accountable. It seems like that crowd has abrogated whatever responsibilities they have and whatever belief and faith that the people have had in them to put them there for the sake of protecting the democracy. That to me is the ultimate crime. That is like people going to a doctor who they go to the doctor and tell them they're sick, and the doctor, they have cancer, and the doctor tells them, well, take 2 aspirins and call me in the morning. It is an abrogation of whatever responsibilities that they vowed to assume to protect this great notion of a constitutional democracy and power to the people.
Well, Dwight, I'm looking over my shoulder at a headline. Dershowitz argues for virtually unchecked, unchallenged presidential power. I'm watching these persons who make the laws, who require that we obey the laws. They're ignoring laws. They're ignoring subpoenas. I mean, it's like, are you serious? You are telling me you're going to put me in debtor's prison. Debtor's prison. That's what they're doing to people. And even though marijuana is legal in Illinois, we're still seeing more brown and black men are being arrested. What is our takeaway from this time? I mean, and how does that play into 2020?
Is that your question?
Oh, absolutely. You know, you're the knower of all things.
I just hope, Santita, that the young people take this seriously enough for them to cut down their radios and cut off their music and go to the polls and vote. Because their futures are at stake.
Well, stop it. What, when you say that their futures are at stake, what do you mean? Because that sounds really big, and it sounds like it's really over the top.
It is this, watching this as this takes shape, it is a frightening kind of way parallel to what was happening in Nazi Germany, where you saw the fool become the Fuhrer, and you saw him very slowly and very methodically creating crises to take power. And before you knew it, one man's word was law, and he had subjugated the whole government to himself. And they later found out that it was a madman. And so you see these parallels where Trump and his crowd is arguing that he should have the right of first refusal for all things. And that is, I say, a precursor to fascism. And they are finding out, and psychiatrists are beginning to testify to this, is that he's also unbalanced. That he is, in many ways, a madman. And so it helps you to understand, it's almost like watching Caligula in the White House. And the next thing we'll know, boy, he'll be singing to a horse. Because
wait a minute. He will be singing to a horse. Who, Dwight? Okay, continue. I just, I have to go off the channel for people to hear you, but singing to a horse. Wow. Please, Dwight, continue.
His choices become our choices, and his decisions become our decisions. And so our children then get locked in the wars that are unfair. Our citizens, those citizens of other country that are under assault that's trying to come here, get locked in the death scenarios because he won't open up the borders. Those who are on welfare and can't eat, we get locked off of assistance because he's going to cut off welfare, and those who are in health crises will have that reinforced because he's cutting out Medicare. These are life and death situations. It's not a stage joke. This is real life, and there are real consequences in this.
There are real consequences in this, and would you say racism is a form of classism? Many people get that twisted, right? Do you see racism in this? Other forms of classism, or is just everything at play here?
I see narcissism.
Ow, okay.
When you are a pure narcissist, everything that is unlike you is inferior to you. Whether it's class, I think he has the same contempt for the poor as he does for black people. I think he has the same contempt for women as he does for the working poor. He is a pure narcissism, and anything that does not look like him or reflect him, he has contempt for.
Wow. Yeah, but it seems like that that whole, it seems like we're living through another Gilded Age where we're seeing that all over again. And my brother said to me some time ago, a few years ago, he said, look, you can throw resumes out the window, and anyone who's giving you a paycheck, kiss them, because people are hiring folks that they like. That's it. They'll train people, but all this stuff is out the window. And I think that you're right. It's narcissism. And narcissists want people who look like them, who think like them, who are like them. And that is the end of that.
And that's why I feel it's what happened in Germany is that the Nazi philosophy is that they are the superior people and they are God's chosen. And anybody who does not look like them, who are not blonde and blue-eyed, anybody that didn't talk like them, which was, the language of the motherland, anybody that didn't have that label was disposable. They were inferior and therefore disposable. And so in many ways, that attitude of superiority overrides all other attitudes. All other attitudes are subjected to that.
Well,
Huh?
no, that's why the proposed cuts when he is at Davos, the people who rejected him 3 years ago, because he was not like them. That is to the oligarchs and the kings and the queens, because those are the people who go to Davos, the World Economic Forum. They said, he's just a little too rough around the edges, to put it politely. And they pushed back on him. Now that they see what his policies, they support him. And so he felt comfortable enough, and they made him feel enough a part of them, that he said, okay, when I'm reelected, Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare on the table, we're cutting, which is going to kill people. Let's not say, let's put it where it is. It's not going to make people uncomfortable. People are going to die. You won't be able to you will not be able to afford to live. That's why you have to vote in 2020, everybody. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. And that's why we should not play about these candidates. We're looking at personalities. We're not looking at policies. I love these people we talked about today. But if I want to know what policy you're offering up, that's what I want to talk about. How are you planning to challenge him on and challenge the establishment itself? Because Democrats and Republicans, the corporatists have been pushing to hack Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. That's just it. And there are corporatists who are Democrats, and there are corporatists who are Republicans. Let that go. My brother Jonathan puts it this way. It's a bipartisan betrayal. Who's going to help us to eat? Who's going to help us to survive? That's what this is. And yes, racism is a very real part of it. You had an MSNBC commentator who called the Los Angeles Lakers the N-word, and she didn't stop. And as a matter of fact, when she got off the air, she said, I didn't say that. Then she said, well, it was a mistake. Think about that. We have people who feel that they are superior to other people. We have people who are making policies that will ensure that these other people to whom they are superior won't make it. Won't make it. And Dwight, that is profoundly disturbing, and you're right. That is when you start looking at Germany, but I don't think we've looked at Germany closely enough, or slavery, for that matter, because there is evidence. Dr. Joy Leary has tracked the evidence, Dwight, that shows that slaves were worked to death. When they have looked at their bones, their tendons and muscles snapped. There has been a wanton and reckless disregard for human life since the beginning of time. When are we going to learn? Dwight, please, I look anytime I'm getting an from him. I think I've hit something. Dwight, your thoughts before we go.
My thoughts is just the urgency of the times. The consolation we have is God is in control always. And so providentially, this is going somewhere. The sad part is that the reason he's not responsible is because he's really given us an option and the opportunity to fix it. Now, in his pre-knowledge, he's already said in the book it's going to go in the wrong direction. But that does not advocate our responsibility, only because we've advocated our responsibility to exercise our option to be involved in the changes. I think that it's going to end badly. This is, I fundamentally believe.
Why do you say that? What do you mean? What do you mean? Explain that.
Well, it seems like the constellations are lining up that way. And for the rest of Revelations to be fulfilled, certain things have to happen. And none of those things are good things. And I see this lining up in that, within the confines of that reality, is that I think that there's a good chance that Trump will win re-election. I think there's a good chance that his walkaway will be that he is the law and has capacity to make the laws. And I think that make and break the laws. And I think for those 50 million people that support him because they share in that philosophy, is that in many ways they're going to reap what they sow. And that's why I use an analysis today about once Godzilla gets out of the water and comes to the shore, everybody is up for discussion. Everybody's in jeopardy, including those 50 million people that voted for Trump, who thought that he represented their collective self-interest, and find out he only represents his own and an elite group. And at some point, that 50 million people are going to run counter their interest. And they will turn on them and attack them. There was an old saying in Germany, came out of Germany, that one writer said that when Hitler came for the Jews, we kind of watched. So then they came for the retarded, and we kind of watched. And then they came for the poor, and we kind of watched. And he said, and then finally, and I'm paraphrasing, said then he came for us. And there was nobody left to help us. And that's the scenario I'm looking at, is once he gets in the second term, and you'll see I don't think we've seen the real Trump yet.
Ooh, what do you mean by that? Whoa, don't run past that.
I don't think we've seen the real Trump. I think when he gets to this second term, and there's less at stake for him, and you don't have to impress anybody, we will see the real Trump. And we will see the real agenda. And those who are operating off of the false premise that this is also about them will find out that they will be sheep brought to the fold themselves. They will be placed on the altar themselves. These are very democratic wolves. And they are sheep to them. And so you will find them having barbecues all over the country with those sheep that thought that they represented them, that they weren't part of this. When they cut welfare, you will find that many of the people that are on welfare are also Trump supporters. You will find that many of the people that are totally dependent on Obamacare are Trump supporters. And when they start making these cuts, they too will be on the altar of despair. Because they are as dependent upon this as we are. But their arrogance and false sense of superiority would not let him live up to that. They think that them and Trump are the same guy. And they're not.
Always brilliant, always illuminating. I said that about Phyllis Bennis, but I say it about Dwight McKee. Always helping us to see, step through the looking glass, people. That's what you help us to do, Dwight, and we're so grateful to you for all of your brilliance and insights. Because we are living in some really interesting times, perilous times. I don't think we really understand the times in which we're living. I really don't. And we're going to have to be prayerful and mindful and watchful. And we need to act. You need to get registered to vote. You need to be concerned about all of these voter purges, whether you are a Republican, Democrat, Independent, or someone who just does not want to be labeled at all. It ought to concern you. Anytime someone has their vote stolen from them, has an election stolen from them, you ought to be offended. Period. That's why I said, look, I wasn't picking on the Republicans today. You have a woman who lost the senatorial race in the state of Arizona. She lost. Then the governor appointed her and gave her the seat. Who does that? How do you explain that to a child? Really? It's horrible. How do you explain 2000 to anybody? When the Supreme Court steps in, well, Scalia did say, Dwight, no, there is no explicit right for you to vote. And that's true. And we don't move on that. We don't say, you know what? He's right. This is wrong. We need to work this out. We've got to make some changes. Otherwise, we are going to be consumed and we will not survive. But I'm hopeful because I think that there is a balm in Gilead. I do believe that. I do believe that it will heal the sin-sick soul. And I think that after we go through this really, really painful process, the best of us will be pulled out. And I'm glad of that. But I know we're in for some really, really trying times. There's a wonderful song by that name, Trying Times. We are. And we need to, maybe it'll make us get together, Dwight. Maybe it'll bring us closer. Maybe. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see. But fewer and fewer people are making more and more money. And more people are making less and less money and are starving and dying. That is not the world that God intended, everybody. It's not the world that God intends, and it's not the world that He's going to have. So I love you, everybody. I will see you and talk with you tomorrow morning on the Santita Jackson Show. Smile, Vidalia. Cortez. Okay, we got a lot of equipment in here. And thank you for being so patient. You know, on WCPT, we are doing a lot of rebuilding here. So we've had to switch over to our own devices. And you all have been so kind as we've been working out, you know, the issues with sound and all of that, and with the visuals. And so thank you very much for joining the Santita Jackson Show page over on YouTube. Please like and subscribe and continue to join me over here on Facebook on the Santita Jackson and Friends page, and like and share, because you all are we're watching the numbers climb and we're excited about that. We thank you for your support, because we do this for you every day. Do it for you. And I praise God for this opportunity to be with you every day and to be able to bring brilliant minds like Dwight McKee to you today, and to bring a brilliant mind like a Phyllis Bennis and a Ron Fine and an attorney C.K. Hoffler and Reverend Marcia Dyson. These are some of the greatest minds and some of the most well-intended people you will ever not hear from. But thanks be to God, we have WCPT, and I have this platform because I want to make sure that you hear from these people. You need to know that these people exist and that we have access to them. God bless you, everybody. I will see you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson